welcome to another session of the Educators Roundtable. So, today we're going to talk about whether or not our students have effective communication skills or even etiquette. A lot of those things may seem a little passe in how we feel or think people should communicate, but it's traditional things that students will need as they matriculate through education, as they gain employment, and as they mature in life. So the question is, do we really think our students today have the ability to be effective communicators, to problem solve, to work in teams, to do what most of us do every day when we go to work, when we communicate with other people, and whether or not they have the skill set to do it verbally or non-verbally? So that's what our conversation is about at the Educators Roundtable. So let me welcome my co-host. Hey, Shannon, what's going on?
Hey, Briquette, not a whole lot. How are you?
I am outstanding. I'm really excited about today's topic. I think, with my years in education and still working with education as a consultant, I hear a lot of things and I see a lot of things, but I will say, just as a mom raising a teenager who raised a teenager, I'm going to tell you, I am a little concerned on how they're going to transfer the skill set of how they communicate in social media, how they're able to diffuse or work through problems without it becoming volatile. So a lot of those things do definitely concern me. And also the number of students who become very combative with their teachers, with school administrators today. And so I don't know if it's based on their concept or idea that you have to, I repeat, have to, um, as they say, respect, you got to have your respect and all of that. I don't know if it's that or they're in that microwave world, right? So if you're in a microwave world, then life doesn't happen that quickly, right? So I don't know. What do you think it is before we start getting into the numbers? Because I'm sure in New York, you're facing the same thing we face here in Michigan.
So I'm of two minds here, Christine, and the one is you absolutely. Uh, I think it's essential to learn how to communicate effectively, and I think that those are skills that are necessary as they get older, conflict resolution. But I do think, and so here's the other side of that coin. I think that schools have to take the first step, and organizations have to take the first step because students aren't always coming from a place that has been as supportive as schools should be. And so I think that the playing field isn't always as level as it should be. And sometimes the expectations of those coming into this space uh, are much more institutional than people focused.
So it sounds to me like traditionally, when I attended high school and middle school, we took certain classes like etiquette, like cooking, right? Are you thinking because a lot of those skills are not being taught at home that we need to be more aggressive about maybe adding that back into the curriculum?
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. I think, and I think that those are all life skills. And I oh man, I think I definitely don't feel good about the phrase life skills, but 21st century skills, soft skills, people skills, however you want to frame it. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, but the question still remains is that if you feel that the students are not getting what they need, how do we change that?
So here's the long and the short. I think we have to be explicit in the way that we approach teaching those skills, just as we are with the content. And I think that you have to have teachers who realize the complexity of doing so, and who are willing and able to bring those skills explicitly to the conversation. So
Mhm.
but it's explicit teaching of those skills. It's checking for understanding. It's quizzing. It's all of those things. But we have to teach them in the classroom.
So this is the thing. How do you check for understanding when it comes to etiquette and effective communication skills, other than what we understand? So I'll say this to you. When I was teaching, there was a young lady who obviously she came from a home where her family argued a lot, used quite a bit of profanity. And so I used to just simply say to her, before you choose to use profanity, can you do one thing for me? Can you just take one deep breath just for me? And then say, think about what you want to say and then say it. So what I was trying to, give her the skill set to understand is that there are better choice of words or things that you could be doing, right? And that's what I wanted her to understand, is that she could make a decision not to speak that way, right? And it kind of
And,
goes itself. So is that what you're saying? The teachers are going to have to do more of that? Because right now, Shannon, they're putting on a whole show right now. I don't know if they have. Maybe it should just be a whole class. Like, don't put the onus on the English teacher. Maybe it should just be a communication and etiquette class now.
yeah, but I think that as an English teacher, if I assign a group project and a student is responsible for working with others, then there are ways of explicitly teaching communication within the context of that group project that are going to give me and that student an opportunity to see kind of how well they can problem solve, resolve conflict, communicate with others in order to put together a project. And I think that that's an integral component of school. It should be. And I
It
also
is.
think that
That's fair.
apart from the side,
Mhm.
that there should be some more discrete skills taught, like completely out of context, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the we it's so absolutely fascinating. We took a group of students to a restaurant, one of those restaurants that has like multiple forks and knives and glasses,
How did that go?
and they were like, they were shook. They were like, okay, so like, which one do I do, and how do I, and but they were like, they knew that it was a social situation, that there were some
Right.
expectations of them, but they did not know what to do. And I had to own kind of not preparing them for that situation. But I think that needs to be a piece as well. And no, I don't think the English teacher should be teaching that.
And I agree. I think a lot of it is the practice and application of it, right? So I agree, everyday teachers should have to practice the application of effective communication skills. 100%. Where my concern is when the initial, how can I say, practice of it is not initiated in another class. So for example, when we went to home ec, I learned how to make curtains, pillows, how to iron a hem, how to hem my own pants. So even if my mother wasn't a seamstress, of which mine's was, I had something to practice. Like, I learned it at school with the professional, and I could come home even if my parent wasn't a seamstress, and I could hem my own pants, right? So my concept behind this is, why aren't we offering that as a class where a kid could practice, like you said, sitting at a table, you know what I mean, going through the things that are required as far as etiquette, right? All right, and so you go through that portion of it, and then when you think about big picture, how do you problem solve? How do you debate? Remember, we had debate class and we had debate teams, and it showed you how to debate just with facts, right? That to me is awesome, right? 100%. But what do you think about that?
So I think two things. I am a product of the Detroit Public Schools, and I proudly attended Cody High School. Go Comets. That having been said, during my time in high school, um, there were classes that were offered, just as you said, that were really kind of foundational for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Learn how to make chocolate chip cookies. Learn how to do all the
I
things that you
know.
do right in those classes.
Yes.
But late 90s, early 2000s,
Yeah.
uh, the state of Michigan, just like the rest of that area of the country, saw a dramatic decline in school funding.
Yeah.
And what are some of the first programs that are cut? Programs that are deemed non-essential.
Correct.
And machine shop, wood shop, the driver's ed class. I mean, how many of those
Mm-hmm.
old Detroit high schools had a driver's ed
That's
track,
how I
right?
got my driver's
Come on, who
license.
didn't,
At
right? It's
school.
a thing. That having been said, those things were eliminated, right? And I think that they were
Yeah.
largely financial decisions. And coming from where I come from, we didn't have the resources to put Shannon in some private institutions to kind of make up for that shortfall. And I don't
Exactly.
think that the families in the city do today. So
I agree.
it was a financial decision, I think, and those things were deemed non-essential, and now we're seeing the ripple effect of that.
And I agree with you 100%. I think that is the ripple effect that we're seeing right now, is that when those things were in place, that's how we learned how to cook. That's how we learned how to clean. And then you would go home and it was like, I could wash my own clothes because I learned how to wash them at school. Right. And that's the whole thing. So when your parent then added that as a chore, it wasn't like you were oblivious to it. Right. So I
Agreed.
think, and I constantly say this, how are we going to integrate, traditional education concepts with our new way of teaching? We bring in the new math. And I remember when I was teaching math and one of the kids, they looked at me and said, "Oh, Miss Burkett, you're doing old school." I said, "No, this is how you check your work, longhand. So first, let's do it the right way, and then let's do it the new way. But I at least want you to be, because when you take these tests, this is the way you check your work to see if it's correct. I don't know if the new way is showing you that. So I'm gonna show you the way Miss Stewart showed me over at Northwestern High School. Whatever. Nobody's care about that little Cody over there. So let me introduce our guest. You and I have been chatting about it and everything. And I know Nicole Beecher is the CEO of Etiquette, Michigan Etiquette School. Let me tell you, guys, you can contract her services, reach out to her after this podcast. I'm going to tell you, she can do it virtual. She can do it face to face. This is a great opportunity for you to bring her in as a consultant and do these classes, because I'm going to tell you, just effective communication skills will take our kids a long way. And honestly, I would love to take a kid to a restaurant like you guys did, Shannon, and they know what fork or spoon to use. Okay. So what's going on, Miss Beecher? How are you? Okay, let me take you. You're on mute. Let me unmute you. Okay, I cannot unmute your mic.
Hold on.
I think, there we go. How are you? Okay, you were unmuted for a second. Just click your mic the way you had it before. You had it. There you go.
Okay.
How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm outstanding. Well, Nicole, listen, we have started this conversation. We pulled up some data just to kind of show people the end result of when a student doesn't have effective communication skills, maybe verbal or nonverbal. And to Shannon's point, the etiquette. They took some kids out to a restaurant, and I'm going to tell you, there's some adults who I'm sure they must have skipped that class if they went to school at DPS, they skipped the class. Okay. Because I'm going to tell you, I looked at him and I said, "Honey, it's the fork on the end. Just grab that fork. You got to work your way in.
And work your way in. Right?
Work your way in." You know what I mean? But here I am as an adult, because he sat there and he's like, "Okay." I said, "Just work your way in, honey. Just grab that and work your way in. And they'll know what to take away. You don't have to give them anything. They know what to take away when the entree comes." Absolutely. So, Nicole, so what's the first thing that you introduce to people when you come into
Wait.
What?
Hi, Nicole. I'm Shannon.
Well, 1 second though. I'm still backstage. Look. So I can't see you. I can't see you, Shannon. So I need to see you.
Oh no, you're in. You're not backstage.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if you're on your cell phone, you need to scan so that you see both of us.
Okay, so hold on. I do. Okay, so I don't know what I'm doing. I guess. Hold on. One second.
So what I'll do is I'll let you work on that and give me 1 second. So Shannon, my question to you is this. The kids who you took to the restaurant, how did that work out?
Oh, I mean, we did the same exact thing. It's like you start on the outside, you work your way in. I mean, and it works, but it's unfair to, I think, and even as a young educator, and I think about those kids, like I put them in that situation. We put them in that situation. We didn't prepare them. And I think that we took some things for granted, and it worked out, but it should have never happened. And I own that.
Okay, so the thing is that I'm going to say this to you. It was a good idea for you to take them there, right? So let's see, Nicole, what do you think? Should they have taken the kids to the restaurant?
So I think that I'll just say this. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have taken the kids to the restaurant, but what I do believe is that before you take kids to a restaurant, children, young adults, that you really should have a conversation, right? Especially if that's not, if where they had gone was not a normalcy, right? So I think that sometimes what happens is, we introduce children and young adults or even adults to situations that may not be a normalcy for them, and or certain types of situations, right? And so what happens is you take them there, they're uncomfortable, they don't really know what to do, so it's great that it's a new experience, but it's uncomfortable for them, right? So I always say, even if I'm traveling with a friend, I always say, hey, this is where we're going. Are you comfortable with that? Or we're going to, a Middle Eastern restaurant. Are you comfortable with that? What questions do you have about that? You follow what I'm saying? I think that's first
Nicole,
of all,
you're so nice. In high
well,
school,
He
honey, as
is
a high school teacher, I go, dude,
awesome.
get on the bus. This is where we're going. Everybody, you had your little sheets for your little parents to sign. What's up? Because if you didn't do your research, I'm like, we're going to the zoo. When we get there, don't ask me what these animals are. We go to the science center. So if the trip was to go to a 5-star restaurant and you didn't know what fork or spoon to use, uh, guess what? You'll learn that day. So
well,
I was that kind of teacher. So I don't know.
but let me just say this to you. I do believe, and we're friends. And so I say this because you and I get it. Like if there's some place that I've never been and you decided to say, "Hey Nicole, this is what we're doing." Have you experienced this or
Yes.
have you been there, right? I think we do it as a normalcy as
Yeah, we
adults,
do. Yeah.
right? But I think what happens sometimes in the teaching space, because I was a long-term mathematics sub, right? So in a teaching space, I think sometimes in high school or even middle school, sometimes we take for granted that that parent has taught their children. And in some
Oh
instances,
my
the
gosh.
parents haven't experienced that, or they don't set a table on a regular basis, or they've never even gone to a 5-star restaurant. You'd be
I'm going to tell
surprised.
you, Nicole, in urban education, I never assumed anything.
Well,
I used to, and I say that because I used to have to tell my kids before you come in my classroom, either you're shaking my hand or you're giving me a hug. You've got to greet people when you come into their house. So
yeah,
the classroom was like my house,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
Shannon, did you guys have that understanding? Like when you come into someone's house, you greet them?
Absolutely. I'll take it a step further. As a high school principal, I stood outside the door every
You
day,
did, Shannon.
and I was the guy like at every card, like, "Mom, how you doing? Dad, hey,
Yes.
Johnny, what you do for breakfast? Get in there and get you some milk or whatever it was, right?" I mean,
Yeah.
so it's but for me it was two pronged. I really wanted to see what was going on with kids and checking in at the beginning of the day to prevent selfishly anything from the weekend coming into the building that could be problematic,
Mhm.
and B, really connecting with them as human beings.
Mhm.
And you know what, that is so true, because you're right. When I was assistant superintendent, which was right down the street from Shannon where he was superintendent, we talked all the time.
We
I
did.
used to do the same thing. I used to just stand outside the middle school to elementary school, talk to all the kids, talk to the parents, and the high school was on the other end. So I wouldn't be over there as much, but I would go down there. And you're right. And the parents, they would expect you. Like they're looking like, well, where are they? They're not here today. That kind of thing. So you're right. But the thing is, Nicole, funny thing, and this is where I say funny thing. When we look at our high school kids, there's an expectation that you're basically a semi-adult. You're on your way to adulthood, right? And there's certain things that you want to understand or know. But what we're finding is right now, if you look on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, did I say Twitter? They're like posting kids just being so aggressive towards teachers,
Yeah.
like verbally aggressive.
Yeah.
And this was like pre-pandemic,
Mhm.
and now with our population back in, and I don't know if it's due to the stress or being reacclimated into a social society, or because they're so accustomed to what happens on social media. Like I'm going to say to you, social media allows you to say or do anything you want with no repercussions.
That's
And I
very
don't
true.
know if our kids truly believe that's effective communication, to be able to tell Miss Burkett, I don't like you today because you look like a bitch, or you act like a bitch, or you know what I mean? So I don't know. And they expect the teacher, who's a human, not to say, what is happening? What did you just say to me? You know?
So can I add something?
Yeah.
So what I really believe is you know, when we talk about communication, right? We talk about communicating. I think a lot of what's happening is that our young people are not, they're not spending a lot of time in the space of communication, right? And so they're looking at, you know, programs or what's happening on social media and different things like that, and they're mirroring after that behavior because it seems to provoke results. And
Mhm.
so, from an etiquette standpoint, in terms of communication, going back to those general courtesies, those social graces, those are things that we really need to re-implement. You know, in our, I really want to be careful and say in the curriculum, because I know that teachers, especially in the urban space, do as much as possible to
Mhm.
help that. But the reality is, you know, my experience in my short time is that it pales to, you know, in comparison to how long you taught. But my experience, you know, is they need more time being taught how to communicate, how to better communicate,
Yes.
how to
That's what
advocate
we
for themselves.
said. Right,
No,
Shannon? We want the class back.
like literally, that is something that I know that, you know, I mean, literally the basic manners. Like, for example, I have a class this Friday, and it's specific to, you know, manners and communicating, basically, right? And so it's really bringing back and saying, it's not, I'm not saying you don't have manners, but what I am saying is that we can do better. So it's manners, social graces, and, you know, basically, you know, communicate and conflict resolution. Well, the other part to that in communication is when you don't have effective conflict resolution skills, or you're not familiar with how to resolve conflict, that also helps to exacerbate aggression, right? Because
Yeah.
now here is Miss, you know, Mrs. Burkett or Miss Burkett, and I'm aggressive towards her because I'm frustrated because I don't know how to properly communicate the message, right? And then the other part of that is really decoding that message from those young people, and you being an effective and efficient teacher, as well as Sharon, you know, in the teaching capacity, you all may have been able to do that very, very well.
Mhm.
But all teachers are not created equal, as we know. And
Yeah.
so some may not be able to decode the fact that, you know, student, you know, Jennifer is upset and she's aggressive because really she's frustrated either about her grade, what happened with
Right.
her homework, and some other things. And I think when we go back to etiquette and communication, parts of the training that I provide literally go through how do you have a discussion with your teacher? What are some things that you can say to express yourself when you're frustrated? What are some words that you can use when you're angry? How do you properly address adults, right? What are manners that you should have every day? Which is, you gave a perfect example. You know, when you walk into someone's house, you greet them. The
And that's like
classroom is
that's
your house.
that's
When you,
100% a basic skill. And
yeah,
so that's like one of the things that we were talking about. But guys, what I need to do is take a quick commercial break, and we
okay.
will be right back. And I want to say thank you so much for joining us. And if you missed the first half, I will reintroduce to you the first half that you missed. Okay, welcome back to the Educators Roundtable. So, in our first session, we talked about the opportunities for kids to grow beyond where they're at, and to understand that a lot of skills that they learn right now using social media, it's not really transferable skills. So, in our next session, we're actually going to look at what skills are transferable and how we can start to acclimate those. And then the top 10 things that you need to start working on with your student to ensure they are effective communicators. So let me welcome back my co-host. Hey, Shannon.
Hey, Burkett.
So what do you think? I mean, how are we doing so far? Are we covering those hot topic areas? Because I don't know, the second half, we might get under some people's skin, telling them what they need to do with their kids. I don't know.
I think we're hitting it. I think that one thing that we haven't hit that I'd like to dig into a little bit
Yeah.
is the impact of social media on our students' perceptions of themselves and others.
And you know what? That's our third half. We're going to talk about specifically that, because our kids spend so much time in social media. And I watched this thing, and I'm going to bring that up in our third half. I don't want to ruin the big surprise at the end. All right. So hey, Nicole, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us. What we want to do is, and Shannon and I pull some numbers. The first thing we want to do is look at the impact of when you don't have effective communication skills, and what happens with that. So we were looking at systemically where students are right now. And Shannon, the first thing is I'm going to show the overall PowerPoint. And then I'll jump back over to that data sheet that we were looking at before. So just to give everyone, our viewers, a high level, the Michigan numbers for suspension, the number of males is 79,742 and females is 35,102. So when you look at those numbers, what you're looking at is quite a few students across the state of Michigan, but we also want to keep in mind that those aren't our total numbers, right? So the number of female students is 35,102. Whites, the percentage, the total number is 47,847, and blacks are 54,346, and Hispanics are 6,671. That's the number of suspensions. The number of students expelled are males at 2,239, females at 1,686, 553 are white, 1,226 are black, and 764 would be Hispanic. So guys, let's start discussing it, and I'll bring up the data sheet so we can see totality. I mean, what are we thinking? Right now, African Americans are at the top in every area, which deeply concerns me. Well, so Shannon, so before I get to you, Nicole, Shannon, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so my first thought is looking at those numbers and thinking about the actual numbers of Black students, white students, Hispanic students. A Black student in our system is 4.1 times more likely to be suspended than their counterparts. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and that's a different conversation.
Oh yeah. We're going to get to that.
But having said that, there are some ways of being, thinking, and communicating that could potentially support some of these students in the face of these scenarios as well.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. Nicole, what's your thoughts?
My thoughts are this: when I look at numbers like that, and based on my experience, a lot of it has to do with the ability to communicate and advocate, number one, for themselves, and effective conflict resolution skills. And I think that, when you look at spaces where there have been very, 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 I don't want to say aggressive, but when you look at spaces where conflict resolution skills, communication etiquette skills are taught and integrated into the daily environment, you'll notice that those numbers seem a little bit lower. What I will say is this: when I would sit down and talk to students who were suspended or had issues or were in fights, what I often recognize is that the message that the individuals were speaking to each other wasn't fully understood. So there was a communication barrier, and it doesn't mean that they were speaking a different, quote unquote, formal language. It really meant that the person sending the message, the person receiving the message wasn't able to really decode the message the way that the sender intended to send it in many cases. Or there were some other issues that were not communicated by the individuals that were bothering them, which really goes back to the ability to advocate for yourself, communicating, yes, right? And those interpersonal skills that are learned through effective communication, right? As well as conflict resolution. I really believe that when you go back to a space of communication etiquette and words that you use and what those words mean, and really comprehending what you're saying to each other, you'll see a decrease in those numbers.
I
I
agree with you 100%. And definitely that's what Shannon and I were talking about. When we went to school, there were certain courses that were taught, and therefore, i.e., we gained the skills outside of the home, outside of the day-to-day traditional classroom. So what we want to share with you guys is 10 ways to improve your schoolers, and regardless of what age, by the way. This, I think, is, people are going to think this is relevant to high school, but it's not. So what we did was we pulled up some information that I'm going to tell you. Honestly, I did a lot of this. So communication skills are important for high school teachers, admissions, staff, employers, and expected high school students to be clearly communicate. They need to clearly communicate. And so one of the 10 is make time to keep talking to your high schooler. I think that's so important that when they get home, talk to them about their day, ask them about their projects, their activities, what they're doing. I think I used to annoy my son because he'd be like, Mom, like, okay, like I've experienced the day. But when you can debrief your day effectively and talk through even the ups and downs or obstacles that you had, it's going to help you to be a better problem solver, right? Number two is talk about the news. Your kids need to be able to give you what did they used to call it for us, Shannon, in high school?
What's
Current
that?
events.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
the current events?
That was a thing.
Right. That was like a thing in DPS, current events. So I used to be like, I gotta watch the news. Everybody stop talking. My teacher gonna ask me something
Like, it's
in the morning.
important. I'm expected to know this when I show up.
Exactly. Because your teacher be like, okay, Christine, what did you see? Dang, they took my story. Okay, I got to give something else that happened in current events. So, you want to talk about the news and what's going on with your kid. You should also enforce good listening skills. Don't allow someone to talk so much that they're not a good listener, right? Because they can miss something that they should be hearing. So I'm going to tell you, I was a late bloomer in talking, and I did a lot of listening, which by the time I started talking helped me to be an effective communicator because I listened to a lot of people jibber jabber for a very, very long time and said nothing. Number four, show your teen ways to find conversational common ground. That goes back to what Nicole was saying. A kid who knows how conflict resolution, that's coming to a conversational common ground. It's not about being right. It's not about that. It's just a person understanding your perspective. That's it. It's not about being right. It's not about being wrong. But I think so many times our kids will go to blows over, I'm right and you're wrong. It's really not about that. And honestly, some of these things as adults, we might want to write them down. So again, this might not be just for high schoolers. It might be for adults as well. Okay. Number five, use social media to help your teen prepare for a conversation. So let me ask you a question. The first thing, does your teen use social media such as Instagram, Snapchat? If so, the photos or videos posted on the peers can be good conversation starters. So do you think that's a way that they're trying to reach a common ground or commonality with their student, with their kid about what they do in their world and make them transferable skills? Do you guys think that's what number five is about?
So, what I really believe is when you use social media, right, what you're looking for are current trends, current information that's out there, different things that are transpiring so that they know how to interact should those situations arise. The other part is there are some parents that are not as affluent or not as familiar with social media. So by doing so, right, you're not just
Mhm.
building rapport with them, as a parent, you're also becoming more acclimated to the conversations that are being had on social media. And you
Yes.
and I also wanted to respond to another point that you made when you about the current events specifically. When you talk through current events with the class, then you're really speaking to those public speaking skills, right? And having that young person become more familiar with speaking in front of people and expressing themselves. So thank you for that point.
I think that's so important. I'm going to tell you, I think if you looked at your kids' social media, you might see some naked bodies. So a lot of things happening. And I don't know if kids are going to show you the real social media or their fake social media. But what do you think about, Shannon, looking at your kids' social media and kind of having a conversation about it? Like this young lady, I don't think any kid would be like, showing their dad or their parent social media that way nowadays, because some crazy stuff happens in social media. I'm not saying go that far. I'm just saying, just let's talk about it. So
I don't want to get too deep. So I'm gonna keep it here. Right now, at this point, for the first time in human history, individuals have the ability to publish on a global scale.
Yeah.
They have the ability to hear and be heard to a degree unparalleled since we've walked the face of the earth. And unfortunately, the level of responsibility that goes along with that publishing has not been explicitly taught. And so we are far behind on really supporting our young people in understanding the power that they wield. And we must. And I think, sadly, most adults still don't realize that. So we're just behind. We've got these incredibly powerful tools in our hands. And we just haven't gotten to a space where we are supporting them in understanding the power that they have, or the impact that they could potentially have in real life, because there's not a real separation between that and this.
It's not. And that's one of the major things we're going to talk about when we look at the second half here, because I think a lot of the kids don't understand that there is no separation between social media and real world. It's all real world. They treat social media like it's a pretend world where it doesn't impact what they do in real life. No, it does. So here we go. Here's number 6 to get us back on track. Help your teen prepare for likely conversations. Getting your kid ready for potential conversations that may occur, depending on what age they are, is so important. Other than stranger danger, like have real conversation. And again, I was going to mention something. I'm going to talk about it later because it's something that I've been watching that I think kind of lends to this whole conversation. I love it. Number 7, explain body language to your child. That's a nonverbal that I think is so huge. I want to tell some of my adult females the same thing, or adult males. Your nonverbal, your body language speaks volumes. I mean, kids, they do these faces like, like whatever. Well, yeah, the whatever is a nonverbal. You're not saying anything, but your whole face is saying it. Your body's saying it. People go like this. That means you want to fight. You're not saying anything, but you're doing this, which means let's do it. Let's rumble. Back in the day, that was Michael Jackson. You know what I'm saying? They was street dancing, right, Shannon? That wasn't a fight. That was like if you could break it, lock it, and you know what I'm saying? If you could do it. So
they were.
Times have changed. I miss those days when you could pop it and lock it. I was really trying to do that. Play word games. Yeah. I was going to tell you, if I was in my other office, I have a pack of cards, and I used to have my son make index cards every week of 10 words with definitions. And I used to say, give me the cards while I'm driving. What does this mean? How do you use it? He's been like, Mom, why are you doing this? He speaks very well now. Thank you very much. So my little 10 words a week worked. All I'm saying is that helps not only you, but it helps the parent build their vocabulary. Play card games with them. Play any type of games so they can understand conflict resolution, problem solving, how to have an effective conversation without being loud, right, or aggressive. But don't let them play. If you're Black and you're watching this, don't play spades. That's not what I'm saying. Because if you play spades, I didn't play it growing up, but when I watched it as a kid, I used to see like the family get really just throw the cards down and just, I don't even know. This is our book. I didn't even know what's happening. But I kept saying, I don't even want to learn how to play that. And I didn't. To this day, I don't know how to play cards. Okay. I play Uno. What about you, Shannon? What do you play?
Well, I can tell you this. Yes, I play spades, not well. I'm quick to say I have 17 books, and or 14 in a possible, like just
right.
making up random stuff, right? My partner is always upset with me. So,
I know. Yeah. So you're one of those people that are throwing the cards down on you, like what?
Absolutely.
What about you, Nicole?
I actually do play spades, and that's one of the favorite card games for me. I love spades.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, Nicole, you're going to have to teach me, because obviously Shannon can't, because he's calling more books than he has.
No, it's just random. I could not be Nicole's partner. She would be so angry with me. What are you doing?
You're right?
I know. People that take it seriously can't even play with me.
And in my family, I kept saying, "What is this? Is just playing cards." They would just, almost go to blows over those books.
Spades is a very passionate game. Okay,
I didn't know that. So as a kid, I made a decision growing up. I will never play cards.
I want to be a part of that. You were traumatized.
I was like, this is too much activity. Now I'm going to tell you, I love number 9, which is enjoyed movies, books, and shows together. Now, I don't know if it was because he was an only child, but I spent a lot of time with him. Just us going to the movies, reading books. And when he got into comic books, I thought I was in heaven because I am like a Super Friends Unite fanatic. I didn't push him into it. I even got him a Bible, a cartoon Bible, right? Because he was just into and I said, be like, this is so awesome. So he was really interested in science, I guess so, right? His mom was a chemist in her first life before she became a science and math teacher. So why not? But he loved science and experiments. He loved, what was that book where it's talk about the craziest things that happen or something? I got to remember that book, but he made me go buy that. Remember back in the day, we had a book that had, I can think of it, but he used to read that book all the time. I used to say, haven't you read it enough? But I'm going to tell you, although my son was a big guy, he played football, he was really a geek underneath it all, just a really smart kid. And I really liked that about him. We would go to the movies and I was the kind of person did you see that? Look at the animation on that. Can you believe? He was like, Mom, really? This is what you're doing? Yes, that's why we sit in the back so we can talk about, we need to narrate the movie, right? So I'm going to tell you, number 10, encourage your child to keep a journal or a blog.
Yes.
This was a no-win for me. I gave my son a book. And when I looked at the book, some days he just wrote a date on it. Other days he wrote a cartoon picture. Then later on, it would be like, I like her hair. She had a nice dress on. I was like, this is not what I was looking for. So I don't know, because he was a boy. Nicole, you have a daughter. Is she a journal writer or anything like that? What does she do?
Yeah, so actually I have twins. So I have a boy and a girl, and they both jot things down. I know for sure my daughter does keep a journal sometime, and I believe my son still does too, but that was very much a part of their upbringing. They were encouraged to, have a journal, to write down their thoughts. That actually every year in school, they ended, with the year with a full journal or 2 or 3. And I do believe they still use that. I know for sure my daughter does. And I know I've seen something that my son has, because they're young adults now, but journaling is very much a part of what we use for improving communication. And actually, for information that they wanted to share, we'd actually really talk through that journal and talk about how they felt in situations that happened, and why they felt a particular way, based on a situation that happened. And I really do believe, I can honestly say that did, help improve their communication skills.
I totally believe it does. Most boys don't do it. Shannon, Anissa said, I totally agree how you basically just gave too many books in the spades game, because she said, no spades, what kind of mess?
Yeah.
So she over here, and hey, Cook, she's over here like, Shannon, you should not be playing spades.
I shouldn't be. You know what? As a matter of fact, my wife she no longer partners with me.
She shouldn't partner with you, Shannon. So, all right. So guys, listen, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk specifically about social media and non-transferable skills. So again, guys, thanks for watching us at the Educators Roundtable. Okay, guys, welcome back to session 3, the Educators Roundtable. And just to do a recap, we talked about the top 10 things that would help your students and you form better communication skills by working with them. And then in segment 1, we talked about the discipline and the impact of what happens. But now we're going to go deeper. We're not only going to talk about the impact, but we're going to talk about social media and also non-transferable skills. So Shannon, welcome back. Oh my gosh, we're covering a lot, right? We're just like icing through this. I feel like this should be like a three-parter because there's so much to talk about. But I don't know. When we talk about social media, it's getting ready to get big. And I'm going to tell you right now, Nicole is a social media queen. That is her thing. So we're really going to have a lot to talk about. So Shannon, let's start with you. What do you think about social media and what's happening with our students, our kids, just not our students, kids in general?
That's a big question. I think you might know what I think about social media, and having said that, I think that there's immense value in it, and there is great benefit. As I said earlier, the ability to touch the world in a way that we haven't been able to before is huge and is massive. However, to quote Uncle Ben, and your son would know who he is. That's Peter Parker's uncle.
Yes,
Spider-Man. That having been said,
I know who it is.
But I also see. And this was actually supported by the recently leaked documents from Facebook. There's a detriment to some of this as well, and I think about TikTok, and let me give you a real example. So my niece and I were cooking, and my niece is 12, and she wanted to cook this thing that was on TikTok, and they'll show the ingredient, they'll snap their fingers, and then the ingredient will be chopped up in a bowl, right? And I'm like, no, we have to actually
we have to do it
and chop. Like there is no shortcut associated with this.
Her.
We have to like do the work. She didn't think that it would be magic, but she didn't know like the lengths that are, and so we're shown these shortcuts,
right?
And we're shown these really cool graphics and slick ways of doing hacks. The word is hack. Everything is hacked, right? Everything is a shortcut and everything is hacked. And no, there's real work involved in all of these things. And you need to know that. You need to be prepared for it before you try and do this thing.
So I love that.
That's how I feel about social media.
So you were like, honey, no, but we got to do it. Like, that's not how it works.
You have to peel these onions, right?
Right.
You have to, and we're going to cry a little bit while we do so.
I love that. So my son, this is so funny. He went to UD Jesuit. And so they each had to submit a project idea. So I said to him, why don't we submit a project on how you can feed a family of 4 with $20, right? So my son goes, this is insane. How do you do that? He said, you don't feed us on $20. I said, because I make more than $20. But for some families, that's all they have. So I took him to the Dollar Tree. That was the first thing. And so he went and picked up some things. I said, no, you can make spaghetti and get the spaghetti sauce. I said, let's get some seasonings. He said, well, why am I paying for seasonings? You have seasonings. I said, but no, this family may not have them. So go get your little Dollar Tree seasonings. And I said, go get you a pound cake. And he said, why am I? Because that's your dessert. You got to serve a dessert with this. He said, Mom, I said, a salad, an entree, and a dessert. That's what we're doing. So we did that. We went to the grocery store. We got some berries, a small thing of blueberries, strawberries, some whipped cream. And then we got a salad. We just got lettuce, chopped it up with some tomatoes and cucumbers. And we bought a thing of salad dressing from the Dollar Tree. So he was like, oh, I got money left over. I said, no, you don't, because we still got to get some sodas or something, some water, we got to make these drinks. And then I said, so he set the table. He took all his receipts and we did a video. This is where the funny part is. He was like, who's supposed to cook this? I said, no, this is not Twitter, Instagram. What you think? Like it was going to be, oh, I bought this. And then after, ta-da, like it made this. So I made him cook the whole thing. He made the desserts in wine glasses. Of course, I told the teacher those were my wine glasses, but the content came from that and how much money he had left over. And she was so impressed. She had him redo it for the entire class. So she brought in a pot and everything, a hot plate. Like she had him redo the whole thing. And other kids from classes were coming in and they were so impressed that he was able to do this on less than $20. But that just showed you that one, like your niece, she was like, ta-da, like it was supposed to be a ta-da, and it was done. But more importantly, it taught him responsibility with his money, right? It showed him that if you do in college, anything happens, you got $20, you can feed whatever football players, you can feed at least 2 of y'all. Now, I'm not saying 4 because football players, but you can eat and you can eat well, right? And not eat junk. And that was the whole point of the assignment. So I think, when you do lessons like that, like what you did with your niece, You're teaching her cooking skills, which we learned in school, home ec, right?
Yeah.
That's why
Yes.
a home ec class, right? And so I think those are really great. So here we go with social media. Guys, we got 10 minutes to knock this out. So you got to come hard and come with your best, because right now, social media, even though I use a lot of it, I'm very concerned about whether or not, and Shannon and I talked about this before, whether or not these kids are going to be able to pay into some Social Security. This social media has taken over these kids' lives as if this is a job for them. Literally, they spend more time in TikTok, Insta, and I don't understand. They're trying to increase followers like it's no tomorrow. You know, there's a contest that kids play where they try to get at least 1,000 followers a month.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you want 1,000 strangers looking at your life?
Well, a couple of things, based on, well, let me just say this. So the more followers you have, the more income you can actually earn. So you have young people that are using, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube to actually earn income. So they're in spaces that they've not had access to in the past and that we didn't have access to when we were younger. So, after you get so many followers on YouTube, you can then, right, invite people to watch and you can earn money. They're pay, you have situations where you can pay for posts and different things like that.
But isn't that dangerous to a
So
certain degree? Because now you're opening your
I
life up.
do,
And if a complete stranger walks up to you out of those 4,000, 5,000 followers you have, this person's talking to you as if they know you and they're familiar with you and you've never seen them a day in your life. But they're one of
I
your
agree. I think it is dangerous.
5,000 followers. And that's the one thing that concerns me with our kids today is that complete strangers, you've given them access to your entire world. And the only reason why I say it is that a couple years ago, a friend of mine put on Facebook that she was going out of town. And she was one of those big social media people. Well, while she was going out of town, she posted that somebody broke in her house. Because the whole time on Facebook, she's like, I'm here, I'm there. She's telling everybody where she's at. She's everywhere but home. And so a person who followed her, who watched her on Facebook, decided this is a great opportunity to break in her house. And they did. So that's what I mean. It's just really, really, it concerns me. Shannon, what's your spill on social media and the negative impact that you think it may or may not be causing?
So I think first and foremost, my take on it is really focused around self-image. And I think the constant need to show the world how cool your life is. Like, look at this cool dinner. Look at this cool outfit. Look at these awesome shoes.
Like me.
That pressure to post
yes,
all of these positive things outweighs really what I think can be so incredibly valuable around people problem solving, sharing issues that they're faced with. And folks may do that, right? I'm
right.
But it's this constant pressure for young people to show this image of perfection, of awesomeness, of coolness that is unrealistic and probably exhausting.
It's got to be exhausting.
I'm just like, so again, you're not just talking to some old dude in a sweater vest. I get it. Like,
I love the sweater vest, Shannon.
Thank you. It was chilly this morning. I could see the value of like almost limitless information and opportunities to leverage. Like, so teachers hated Wikipedia, right? But to be completely honest with you, it is generally as accurate as Encyclopedia Britannica.
It is.
Like, and it's constructed by people who bring their expertise and knowledge to the conversation, right? It is a social construct. And so I'm all about crowd sourcing information and sharing. But I think that our kids, especially our young ladies, when presented with these unrealistic images of others, begin to look at themselves in ways that aren't entirely healthy and then seek other ways to gain attention and approval of others. And, you got to have some really high self-esteem to navigate that world and do it effectively. And I think parents and teachers can really support kids in understanding that in some very real ways. And I go back to, we don't do that. We just don't, not generally.
And I'm going to agree with you. I think a lot of times, even parents are using it that way. I have people that since the pandemic, the increased need to have people followers, like they do Facebook Lives as they're making dinner, Facebook Live as they're doing this. Like it becomes a TV show for them. And I'm concerned because at some point you're just letting all of these people into your space and you're begging them to like you. But are you also ready for the other impact, which is negative? What if some people start saying negative things about you?
Mhm.
So people need, once you open yourself up to social media, and I'm going to say that as a person who has branded our company, this podcast, the other podcasts that I do, I open myself up for criticism. And let me tell you, sometimes what people say to me is sometimes often a little funny for me. I've had people reach out to me to try to talk to me personally. I've had people say, "Hey, I want to be on your show." And I'll say, "Well, are you in education?" That they'll say no, but they just want to be seen. So for them, it's just very confusing. I guess that I'm not open to just letting anybody come on and be a part of that voice. But I'm going to say to you guys, social media is definitely concerning. Nicole, I mean, you're like the social media guru over there. What do you think about the impact that it's having on our students?
I think I definitely agree with the both of you in the fact that, about the self-esteem. Shannon mentioned you have to have high self-esteem to really navigate that world. One, I will say that's true. The other part I think is the fact that it can, it can have a negative impact in that if someone is, doesn't have as high self-esteem as maybe someone else, it could cause them to feel depressed or stressed because they don't have as many followers or they're not seen as popular. The flip side to that is there are many things that are calling for the level of interaction on social media to increase. Interestingly, let me just share this with you. I was actually a person who wasn't as active on social media in the past. And I was told literally by individuals who are in great spaces and places of authority. They said, we need to see you more. You need to interact more. And what I have found for our young people is in some of those spaces, if it's done in a safe way, right? And if it's navigated, I would say, under the monitoring of a parent or an adult, that it can be done more safely. And in some instances, some of our younger people have gotten scholarships. They have gotten received invites, regarding things relative to education. So I think it's kind of one of those double-edged swords,
Mhm.
right? Where you have to navigate it safely, but you also, I think Shannon and both of you mentioned this, parents need to be supportive in that space so that they have the relationship and their young people feel comfortable talking to them and helping them to navigate that so it doesn't have that negative effect. I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. So what we want to do now before we in our podcast today, we want to look at these transferable skills. So it says the transferable skills are those that you develop as you progress through employment, education, or training, which is communication, problem solving, and teamwork. Are examples of transferable skills because they can be used when you're employed in an employed role, education, or for training. So when we think about that, and Shannon and I talked about this briefly, problem solving skills should be taught across all courses, right?
Yes.
100%. But to be totally honest with you, in science, we used a lot of problem solving skill techniques and tools, right? Because that's what we did. Honey, one kid said, "Well, Miss Burkett, what is the hypotenuse?" I said, "Hypotenuse." I said, "Honey, that's algebra." I said, "You mean," he said, "Oh, he said the Pythagorean theorem." One of my kids yelled out, "He's talking about the Pythagorean theorem." I just started cracking up. So, the thing is that you had to come up with an issue and problem solve through it using that theorem. And so, what I'm saying to you is a lot of kids today have no idea what that is. Just like a library is the thing of the past, they turn libraries now into computer labs. So,
Mhm.
I don't know I remember, going to the computer and you had to sign out to use the computer and all that kind of stuff. And I do understand there are a lot of contests that you can enter now online to get scholarships for school. So you're right when it's used properly. My concern is that right now attitude, like, Shannon's niece, like my son, they ta-da is done. Life is not that fast, right? There's a lot that goes into getting to that point. And one of the questions I asked a kid the other day, I said, do you know what it takes to buy a car? You know what he said? You just go buy a car. I said, no. I said, do you know what a credit score is? He said, you don't need a credit score. You just need that dollar. That's what he told me. You just need that dollar. He's like, Mom, them days is over. Don't nobody care about no credit score. You just need to have that dollar. I looked at him like, dude, the mortgage company still require, if you want to buy a house, you have to have a credit score. So depending on where you come from, conceptually, they think, he said money. He said, no, he said green is king. He was saying money is king. But I was like, it is to a certain point. There's certain parameters that we all have to, answer to, right? So if you want to live a certain way, you have to, understand what those parameters are and be prepared for those. And that's, we were even taught banking in school, how to open up a checking account, a savings account, how to balance a checkbook. That class, I'm telling you, that was like a good class. And I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you don't know, you need to reach out to Nicole Beecher, Beecher Etiquette School of Michigan. And I'm going to tell you, her services are for sale. You just need to call her and talk about what package you need, how many students, how long you need her services. This is an excellent opportunity to bring back what we all grew up with, which was classes that taught you how to cook, how to clean, how to wash your clothes, how to set a table. That's how I got that little pound cake dessert from. That was Mrs. Sherman. Hi, Miss Sherman, if you still alive. Thank you, Miss Sherman. She taught me that in cooking class.
Did you say you're still alive?
If you still alive, Miss Sherman, I don't know, because Miss Sherman was old back in the day, honey. I don't know. Miss Sherman still might be kicking, but if so, hey, Miss Sherman. So I'm going to tell you guys, it's so important that we talk to our kids. Nicole is an excellent mom. She talks to her kids every day, probably 30 times a day. I'm putting your business out there, Nicole. She talks to her kids all the time. They're like her little baby BFFs. And I'm going to tell you, I think that's so amazing because she runs her businesses, but she still keeps in contact with her kids. And I think that's great. Shannon, you do an awesome job of making everybody feel welcome in any space that you're in. You have excellent communication skills, people skills, relationship skills. And I think that's why you're such a super awesome leader. And I think that's what a lot of our kids today, just being able to mimic and manage that. So one of the things I'm going to pose to you guys as a challenge as we wrap up this session, pose to your kids to do a live Facebook, but do it as a show. Like create a show about something that's impactful. So instead of posting something that's about fashion or whatever, why don't you guys do a challenge to teenagers to post something amazing about themselves or to do a show on a current event and how it's impacted them or impacts them in their area, in their space, to talk about what they want to be in life. It's just to be able to effectively communicate to others and to get that support. To me, that's the only way we can transcend how our kids look for exterior support from others, from strangers, is to show them how it can be used in the right way. So I want to thank my guests, the expert, the CEO of Beecher Etiquette School of Michigan. Again, her information will be posted on the site. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And if you can hold for one moment. And Shannon, as always, it's always such a delight. I'm going to say to you, New York doesn't feel so far away when I can see you at least once a week during the podcast.
It doesn't.
It doesn't seem so far away, but it does seem far away. I just want to say that. But I want to thank you so much. You always bring that perspective that's definitely needed so people can understand the totality, the 360 view of what happens when you look at education through one lens or through a wider lens. And you always bring that wider lens perspective and the impact on not only the individual, but everyone around them. So thank you so much. And I appreciate it. So listen, guys, thank you so much for joining us for another session of the Educators Roundtable. Every week, we want to bring you impactful information, which would be the hot topics in education. So this week, it was on communication and etiquette. and the impact that it's making on our students, may it be social media or whether or not they have transferable skills, whether they're using the right verbal or nonverbal skills. And you know what? The top 10 things, I don't think that's just for kids. Those top 10 things are just as effective for adults. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to all use and reflect. How do we use social media today? Like Shannon said, it's unlimited access to millions of people. We've never had that before in our lifetime. So think about, how are you using it? Are you using it to help yourself? Are you using it to help others? How are you using social media? How are you using your communication skills? And do you know what fork and spoon to use when you go out to eat dinner at a 5-star restaurant? Think about that and join us next week on another session of Educators Roundtable.